Hey everyone, Nubkeks here, and in today's video we're taking a look at some of the really big class changes that came in this week's beta build for Shadowlands. So yeah, some pretty substantial changes here. We're going to be looking at several of the classes. We're going to look at Priest in a separate video tomorrow, because there's quite a few bits there I want to cover, obviously with the Shadow Priest rework. In today's video though, we're going to look at the Demon Hunter, we're going to look at Warlock, we're going to look at Mage, Shaman, Paladin, Warrior. Yeah, so lots of stuff to cover here. There were also some changes to like Death Knights and Druids and things like that. Some smaller changes. Seeing as I haven't done big videos on those specs yet, we'll just cover that stuff when I do get the big video for them done, right? But these are basically all the big updates coming to the classes that we've already looked at on the channel. So I think you'll enjoy some interesting stuff. Let us dive in and see. Okay guys, let us start here by looking at the Shaman. What changes did the Shaman get? They actually got a lot of nice stuff, a lot of nice perks. The funniest change though, the biggest change is to their Covenant ability with the Windfury, Chain Harvest. I am not exaggerating. This does almost 8 times as much damage as it did before. In fact, it's 7.66 repeating, of course, if you want to be specific. So this essentially has brought it in line with the other Covenant abilities. So if you compare it to the Vesper Totem, for example, this is going to do comparable damage to the Vesper Totem. Also worth noting that if you are a Enhancement Shaman, I wanted, of course, to clarify this for people. This does actually scale and work with the Maelstrom weapon, so you can actually instant cast that Chain Heal, which is fantastic, though I don't believe it does any extra damage. You can cast the Chain Harvest. So yeah, this is a 1.5 minute cooldown. It's going to do 3,500 shadow damage to up to 5 enemies, and also do about 2,500 healing to up to 5 allies. It will hit all of them, so it can hit 10, 5 enemies, 5 allies in a single cast. And it obviously gets reduced cooldown for each target hit. So this is actually now looking really good. Like I said, compared to the Vesper Totem, these now do pretty similar amounts of damage and healing. Obviously, the Vesper Totem, you put down the totem, you need 3 damage casts to make it do damage. You need then 3 healing casts to make it pulse the healing. Now, that does mean you have a bit more control over when those things come out. This is all in one single cast, but it also has the benefit, certainly for the DPS classes, that to get the healing effect, you don't need to cast 3 healing spells. It just does the full healing effect. To do the DPS effect, for the healer, you just need to press the button once. Fey Transfusion also got a bit of a buff, again, just upping its damage a little bit. The issue with this is, again, that this is kind of purely AoE, and the healing effect has actually been nerfed slightly to compensate for the increased damage. But again, that healing effect isn't that good unless you're going to be hitting multiple enemies with this. So that's the big problem with Fey Transfusion, I think, compared to the others. Like, Chain Harvest is still an awesome AoE heal, even if you're fighting one target. Same with Vesper Totem, and you can conduit that up, and so on. But yeah, interesting changes there. And again, we can... That's the healing for Fey Transfusion. Certainly looks amazing, so there is that to be said for it. Another few nice buffs then to the Shaman kits in general. One big one, Windfury Totem has had its benefits doubled. It's twice as good now. This now gives all party members, or it does as well affect all raid members. Currently, it does, though it doesn't say that it does. Increases their chance to attack again with their auto attacks by 20%. So this is obviously especially good. It's useless if you got a mage in your group. The mage doesn't care, but if you have something like an arms warrior, where their melee attacks, number one, hit very hard, but are also their primary way to generate rage and fuel their abilities, this becomes very attractive in that case. The reason that they doubled this was people were running, sims and seeing how much would this contribute to raid damage, and it was extremely low. So it's nice to see them give this a little bit of love. It may still end up being, for a typical raid group, which does have a lot of casters and healers and tanks, this may end up being like not that impactful for a raid group, but this could make it very attractive for the Enhancement Shaman, at least in Mythic Plus, right? Where if you are going to be joining a group with, let's say, like a Prot Warrior and an Arms Warrior, you as an Enhancement Shaman with the Windfury Totem start to look like a really, really good addition to that group composition, or like a Beastmaster Hunter as well, something like that. So that is something to bear in mind. It's certainly a very nice buff to the Enhancement Shaman, which is a great thing. The Shaman have also received some of their leveling perks. So one of the really nice ones, Astral Shift, now has a leveling perk that increases its duration by 4 seconds, bringing it from an 8-second defensive up to a 12-second defensive. So obviously the Shaman are very squishy. They don't have many defensives. This is a very, very welcome buff, so that's fantastic. Hex also now has a 10-second lower CD, so for the Enhancement Shaman, it's now a 20-second CD, for example, which is great. For the Resto Shaman, then, they have received some perks as well. First up, Mana Tide Totem. Now, as you can see, has a rank 2, which increases its radius by 100%. By default, it's only a 15-yard radius. This makes it a 30-yard radius. Essentially just means in a raid fight, in a raid group, this is going to just restore mana to the healers, and you don't have to worry about the placement. So a quality of life change, which is cool. And Healing Tide Totem also received another level 2, rank 2 perk, where Healing Tide Totem lasts an additional 2 seconds. So from 10 seconds up to 12 seconds. So it's going to get 1 extra pulse of healing out. So again, you know, just a nice little throughput buff to them, which is a cool thing. And yeah, lots of nice little buffs, small things for the most part, apart from Chain Harvest suddenly becoming very, very strong. Lots of nice perks to the Shaman, which is great to see. The Protection Warrior also saw quite a lot of changes here in this beta patch, which are good. Before we look at the specific changes, I just wanted to mention very quickly, because we wasn't able to test this when I did the Protection Warrior video, but I've now been able to look at Condemn and the damage numbers, and more importantly, the defensive numbers. So I just did a quick comparison. I thought you'd be interested to know. So in terms of single target, in terms of spending our Rage, obviously we're still going to be using Rage on Shield Block, that's fine. But in terms of then spending it on Ignore Pain versus spending it on Condemn, how is it going to work out? How does it compare? And the way it works out is this, that Ignore Pain... I'm going to take off Battle Shout because I did the numbers without Battle Shout on by accident. But Ignore Pain is going to protect you for about 3,900 damage for 40 Rage. This works out to about 97 damage prevented per Rage. Condemn for 40 Rage, but you do get 20% back. So you're going to get 8 Rage back if you do a 40 Rage Condemn. So in other words, for 32 Rage, Condemn is going to protect you from a single target for 2,700 damage. So in single target, that works out as 84 protection per Rage. So Condemn is slightly behind, you know, like 40 Rage Condemns versus 40 Rage and Ignore Pain. The protection per Rage point is slightly behind, you know, 97 for Ignore Pain versus 84 for Condemn, but that's not that big of a difference, especially when you consider that Condemn is going to be doing about 2,000 shadow damage every time you cast it. Compare that to Shield Slam, which is doing, you know, like 1,300 or 1,400 physical damage, and of course that gets reduced by armor. So it's, you know, Condemn is as much damage as double Shield Slam, which is massive. And I actually have a talent, I believe, taken right now, which is upping Shield Slam damage. Yeah, I do in fact have that. So in other words, Condemn is looking extremely strong for the Protection Warrior in single target situations when targets are above 20% in between 100 and 80% health, or between 20 and 0% health. Suddenly you become this massive single target damage dealer without really sacrificing in single target any survivability whatsoever. So yeah, Condemn is, I think, looking insanely good. So just some quick maths there. Now, what has actually changed though in this patch for the Protection Warrior? Well, a few things that are also going to make them feel a bit better. First up, Devastate has had its damage increased by 50%, which is a really nice increase to the damage that Devastate is going to do. So you can spam that out and crit nearly every single time, apparently. So that's really good. We have a bug here with these abilities making everything light up. You can just ignore that. That's a bug. So that is nice. And also, really good news. Thunderclap and Revenge have both had their AoE damage increased. So previously, Thunderclap was doing, in this case, about 500 physical damage, but was doing reduced damage to every target beyond the first target, which was just terrible. Now they have improved it, thank God. Thunderclap is going to do 475 physical damage to the first 5 targets that you hit. And then for target 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on, those targets are going to start taking reduced damage. So I'd say, typically speaking, this is going to mean in most AoE scenarios, seeing as most specs are going to have these target caps, you're going to be doing, you know, pulls of, you know, like 5 or 6 mobs. This basically means that your damage is going to be a lot more substantial against those mobs. So if you have been testing out the Prot Warrior on beta or on the PTR and finding it just felt awful in AoE, which is one of the problems that I found, and that it was, you know, difficult to do damage, difficult to hold threat, that has substantially improved. It's the same deal for Revenge. Revenge now does its full damage to the first 5 targets, and then it will start to peter off on target 6 and onwards. It will do less and less and less damage the more of them there are. So that is a very nice change to the Protection Warrior. So thank God for that. And then we also have a lot of talent changes, which are a little bit hit and a little bit miss, I think. So they're trying to balance out that talent tree a bit. So at level 15, you now have War Machine, so more rage from auto attacks and bonus rage and move speed when you kill. You have Punish, so more shield slam damage and stacking up that damage reduction. But Devastator is now on level 15. I would expect, If this gets tuned up a bit, Devastator will probably be the best option because it just gives you the smoothest flow of extra damage and more shield slams. It just fits nicely into the rotation. One issue is that while they buffed Devastate's damage by 50%, they don't appear to have buffed Devastator's damage by 50%. I'm presuming that's a bug. That's just an oversight, and that they will buff this up by 50% as well. So it should be really good. I think that right now, though, Punish is probably a bit better, considering that Devastator doesn't have the damage buff that Devastate has. Level 25 is still the same. At level 30, we've seen some changes. So Booming Voice is now at level 30, right? Where Demoralizing Shout generates 40 rage and increases damage you deal to affected targets by 20%. So that's competing with the other AoE damage talents of Dragon's Roar and Best Served Cold. So that's a nice change. This has good synergy with the Legendary. I think, though, without the Legendary that buffs Demoralizing Shout or the Conduits or whatever it is, Dragon's Roar is looking really good. This now generates 20 rage, which is awesome. It's going to do about 2,000 physical damage to all enemies in 12 yards on a 30-second cooldown. 20 rage is a nice bit of rage to generate, and it also can crit for 3 times normal damage. To put it in perspective, right, Ravager is going to do about 3,000 damage to 8 enemies over like 11 seconds. So that's like 3,000 damage. If this thing crits, it's going to do about 6,000 damage. So on a 30-second cooldown. So that's really, really good. And the rage generation being buffed up from 10 to 20 is awesome. So that is a really good thing. Level 40 then has also seen the tweak. Impending Victory has been moved up here. So this is now sort of a healing row. This is your healing row. So Impending Victory, this gives you on-demand 30% max health heal. That resets the 30-second cooldown. And that also resets whenever you kill something. So that's quite good for some on-demand healing. Never Surrender, I think, is the weaker option, where Ignore Pain is stronger the lower you are on health. So not too great, and especially if you're running Condemn and want to be spending Rage on Condemn more than on Ignore Pain. Then Indomitable is probably looking like the best overall one, certainly for a raiding situation, where just 10% more max health every 10 Rage you spend heals you for 1% max health. So yeah, just makes you just generally a bit tankier at a consistent level. So there you are. Level 45 then is now your AoE damage row. So you have Into the Fray, giving you haste for each enemy within 10 yards, so more thunderclaps and just faster rotation. Unstoppable Force is still the same, with Avatar buffing the damage of thunderclap, reducing thunderclaps cooldown. But Ravager has now been moved to this row. I think the issue here is that Ravager just seems so much insanely better than all of these. Ravager, number one, does a butt ton of damage. It does a butt ton of damage single target. It does an absolute 8-time butt ton damage of damage in AoE. And of course, it generates a massive amount of rage. Like even in single target, if I throw it on this guy, you'll see that it generates loads of rage, even single target. Like 10 rage every probably like every 1.5 seconds or so, or every 2 seconds. I think it's 50 rage total. Yeah, so 50 rage total from your Ravager every 45 seconds. It's phenomenal. It does loads of damage. Great single target, great AoE. So I do feel that Ravager right now kind of overshadows these, which is the downside. Then level 50 is now more focused on defense. So Anger Management, every 10 rage, reducing the cooldown on Avatar Shield Wall. Heavy Repercussion, Shield Slam, giving 3 more rage and extending the duration of Shield Block by 1 second. And then Bolster. And again, I feel like Bolster sort of overshadows this row, where it reduces the cooldown of Last Stand from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. And Last Stand is going to give you Shield Block for the full 15 seconds. So it makes Last Stand a much better cooldown. Yeah, like I do feel that this is maybe the issue with this, what they've changed with the talent tree. Like I think at level 30 you've got some interesting choices. Like that actually looks, it could be relatively balanced and will change based off of like your talent, your legendaries and stuff like that. That's okay. But level 40, maybe Indomitable is a bit too good. I think level 45, I think Ravager looks a lot better than the other ones, a lot more consistent and just stronger. And level 50, I think Bolster looks better. It just makes Last Stand a much better defensive cooldown compared to getting Avatar's Shield Wall back a little bit more. So yeah, they're trying to fix the Protection Warrior talent tree and make it a bit more appealing, but I do feel like it's better than it was. Slightly better than it was for sure, but I feel like it's probably still quite cookie cutter. Over on the Paladin side, the Paladin has received a couple of small tweaks to its Covenant abilities. The biggest change is definitely with the Night Fae. The Blessing of the Seasons, where you have 4 different blessings that you cycle through, they have had their cooldown increase substantially. So whereas before, these were 30-second buffs with 30-second cooldowns, so you essentially press the button every 30 seconds and had the next buff rolling, the next buff rolling. The buffs now are still only 30 seconds, but the cooldown is now 45 seconds. So you're going to have, for example, in this case, Blessing of Summer up for 30 seconds, then there'd still be 15 seconds left on the cooldown, and then it could go into Blessing of Autumn. So that's a little bit of a nerf to the ability. Definitely it does help, I think, a bit with the conduit, which was a little bit of a problem for the red paladin, which was you have a conduit which increases the duration of Blessing of Summer at max rank by I think about 60%. So it would make it last, instead of lasting 30 seconds, it would last, you know, maybe like 48 seconds or something like that. And the issue was, well, as you can see, Blessing of Summer is a, you know, big chance to do additional damage as holy, so very good to put that on yourself. But the problem is that Blessing of Autumn, which gives you cooldown reduction, right, Blessing of Autumn gives you 50% faster cooldown reduction. That is just much better. Like for a red paladin, that's going to get you into wings more often, which is amazing. More Wake of Ashes and stuff like that. And you really want to be playing around that Avenging Wrath cooldown. So you really wanted to put Blessing of Autumn on yourself. But if you were, again, we're running that conduit, if you put Blessing of Seasons on yourself, you would have to cut off that Blessing of Season, the Blessing of Summer, excuse me. You'd cut off the Blessing of Summer with still 15 seconds left on the duration. In other words, the conduit kind of forced you to put your Blessing of Summer on somebody else, like on, let's say there's a warrior in your group, like a Fury warrior. You put it on the Fury warrior and let them enjoy the extra damage, so you could put Blessing of Autumn on yourself. Or if you put Blessing of Summer on yourself, you'd have to sacrifice all that lovely cooldown reduction and put it on one of your other teammates. So it's a nice change in the sense that, okay, now you can run the conduit and you just get the full Blessing of Summer on yourself. And you might clip it off by a couple of seconds at the end to get Blessing of Autumn on yourself, but you can, for the most part, get that value on you personally, get the full Summer, the full Autumn, and the full Winter on yourself. So I think that's quite nice for the red paladin. Like I said, it's a relatively small change. But there you are. Another very small change is over with the Necrolord Covenant. They just slightly buffed the damage of Vanquisher's Hammer, which I think was good. It was a good Covenant ability for the Prot Paladin, but kind of underwhelming for the other Paladin. So this just now does a bit more damage. So it's going to do 800 shadow damage straight up. So just that straight up damage is a bit better. I think the Conduit buffs that straight up damage, so it makes the Conduit a lot more attractive as well. Again, if I compare it, like my Blade of Justice is going to hit him for 700. And then that. So it's going to hit about as hard as a Blade of Justice does against a typical enemy, because that's reduced by physical damage. It's going to hit, again, about as hard as Judgment. Yeah, it's going to hit about as hard as the Judgment for a red paladin, to put it in perspective. So there you go, Vanquisher's Hammer, a small buff. So not too much for the paladin, and it's mostly really changing the Night Fae Covenant, I think. Havoc Demon Hunters have actually got a little bit of love. They've seen some nice additions in this beta patch, which I think is great. I mean, like, certainly I'm not opposed to the nerfs to their defensives. Like, I mained a Demon Hunter in Ny'alotha. I thought that was totally fair. They're too good at too many things, but it was quite depressing to look at Havoc Demon Hunter on the beta up until this point and go, you're really not getting anything new that's cool. Like, it's mostly just the worst spec than BFA. Well, good news, you finally did get something that's cool. It is a new talent called Glaive Tempest. This has a 20-second cooldown reduced by haste, costs 30 fury. You'll throw 2 demonic glaives in a whirlwind of energy, doing about 2,500 chaos damage over 3 seconds to 5 nearby enemies. This is basically your Legion artifact ability, so it's really, really nice to see this one come back. I'll throw it out here, and you can see it in action. So they're going to spin around. They're just going to do damage, lots of AoE damage. It's going to feel pretty good. So, for example, if I I-beam, and we can compare the damage, like a full I-beam there, baseline I-beam. The I-beam and the Glaive Tempest, they did about the same amount of damage on 2 targets. So, you know, yeah, this is it feels really, really good in AoE. It's got that nice short cooldown. So that is a very pleasant, buff. A bit of excitement there for you, which is great. The Nemesis talent has been removed, and Fell Barrage has been moved from here up there instead, okay? So that's quite a big change as well. Nemesis was I think it was a 2-minute cooldown. You marked a target, and then let's say they're a humanoid, you would do, I think, like a 20% more damage to humanoid targets for that minute or something like that. It was never really picked. I think it got picked a bit maybe in the Legion beta or something at the start, but after that it was like a dead talent compared to Demonic, or then Momentum sometimes showing up as well. So I think it's totally fine that it's gone. I don't mind. Fell Barrage has been buffed. It's now 1-minute cooldown. It does 4,500 chaos damage to 5 enemies within 8 yards. So, for example, compared to this one right now, it does not quite twice as much damage as the Glaive Tempest, and it has the longer cooldown, but this is like a big 1-minute burst cooldown, has no fury cost. So yeah, it's going to do a lot more damage than it did in BFA, for example, but it does have the target cap, right? So that sort of balances it out. But yeah, level 50 now, you're kind of choosing between momentum builds, using Fell Rush to, you know, maintain a buff that increases your damage done, versus Demonic, versus Fell Barrage. One nice other thing that's going to make Demonic, I can't actually take it with Fell Barrage and cooldown, but make it a little bit better, is they've also baked in Furious Gaze baseline, or like a slightly nerfed version of Furious Gaze. So now when we I-beam, when we finish our I-Beam channel, we get 12 seconds of Furious Gaze, which gives us 10% haste, which is really, really nice. Again, that was it was our most popular Azurite trait. Obviously, you had 3 of those stacked in BFA, and it gave you a lot more than 10% haste. It was absolutely nutty, absolutely nuts. This is like a nice, reasonable version, though. It's a relatively small buff, but you will kind of notice it. It feels a bit better, and it does help you with the demonic window. Right now, with my pre-made character, which has a baseline 8% haste, it's terrible. I'm not quite with demonic with its nerfed 6-second duration. If I show this, I just pressed the wrong button. I can't quite fit in 2 death sweeps here. Can't quite do it. Let me just pop like Immo Aura here. You know what? We'll throw down this thing as well. Why the hell not? We'll go into this. We're going to death sweep. Okay, great. And you'll see here. It doesn't quite. It's just barely short. It's just barely short. You have to trust me. I kind of fat-fingered it and did a Chaos Strike when I shouldn't have. You'll just have to trust me, but it is just barely short. But I think this means that when you actually get some better gear, you know, when you get like dungeon gear, certainly when you get raid gear, you are going to be able to squeeze in now 2 death sweeps into a demonic, which makes that talent, again, it brings back that interesting skill play where you want to go into your I-Beam and make sure that you have enough fury, you know, to do this on cooldown. And again, we'll see here, I can mash the button, and look, as you can see right there, it just expired. We go into the blade dance. We're just barely short. But yeah, you will be able to, again, plan it out, have blade dance come off cooldown as you finish the I-Beam, get 2 death sweeps in, and that's going to reward skill demonic play, which is fantastic. So yeah, small changes to the Havoc Demon Hunter, but pleasant ones. If we jump over to Vengeance, they've also received a small change for the pleasant one. So part of the Revel in Pain Azurite trait has been baked in. Well, actually, it's only a small part, but it's significant, which is that Fiery Brand, instead of lasting for 8 seconds, now lasts for 10 seconds. So an extra 2 seconds on Fiery Brand. And the fun thing I was doing and testing out, and this actually ends up being very powerful, was I was testing, okay, there's obviously the Spirit Bomb build, but what if I mentioned this when I did my Vengeance Demon Hunter video, what about the Fiery Brand build? How good can we make this now? And this essentially has a few parts. So number one, we have Fiery Brand now being 10 seconds long. Okay, cool. By the way, the thing that we care about this is that Fiery Brand makes the enemy do 40% less damage to you. It's a major defensive. We're going to combo that with increased duration on Immolation Aura. So Immolation Aura is going to last for 9 seconds. And then Charred Flesh. Whenever Immolation Aura does damage, it's going to increase the duration of our Fiery Brand by ½ a second. So it's very easy now. We can slap on Fiery Brand, then we do Immolation Aura afterwards, and Immolation Aura is going to last the whole way through Fiery Brand and give it a whole bunch. It should give it an extra 5 seconds, 50% uptime. On top of that, because we're giving up Spirit Bomb, we're going to be spamming, obviously, only Soul Cleave to consume Fury and absorb shards. We're going to combo that with this Legendary here, where each Soul Fragment consumed by Soul Cleave reduces the cooldown of Fiery Brand by 2 seconds. And in the testing I was doing, if I throw down a sigil, let me throw down like a sigil of chains and of flame as well to give you like some time tracking on this. But if I do my Fiery Brand and then I do my my thing here, and we'll keep our like Demon Spikes rolling and all that sort of stuff, you're going to see, again, we can track the Fiery Brand up here and its duration. It's lasting quite a long time. There we go. Fiery Brand has expired, and we're actually over halfway through the cooldown of this. We're going to go into another Immolation here, and you can see the cooldown of Fiery Brand is creeping back. It's catching up. And what I found in testing was that with Immolation Aura being about a 14-second cooldown, that we can actually get a Fiery Brand for every second Immolation Aura. And it's also going to last for essentially the full duration, the full cooldown of the Immolation Aura. So this Fiery Brand should expire just about that time that Immolation Aura goes off. And there you go. Immolation Aura comes back. Fiery Brand is back. In other words, you are going to have 50% uptime with this particular build. You can get 50% uptime on Fiery Brand with this Legendary with these 2 talents. You obviously give up Spirit Bomb, which is a massive amount of AoE damage. You give up the Abyssal Strike, so making a Sigil of Flame when you do your Infernal Strike and lowering the cooldown of Infernal Strike. You're giving up some pretty big stuff, but you're getting 50% uptime on a 40% damage reduction. That's pretty damn good. And obviously, if you combo this with Demonic, where you have your Fell Devastation giving you 8 seconds of meta, again, you can cover that 15-second gap where you don't have Fiery Brand. You can fill that in then with the Demonic, with the meta, which I think is very powerful. So this looks really, really good. And of course, I didn't mention this one right there, but in single target, you could just run Fallout, generate more Soul Fragments, just guarantee that Fiery Brand would be off cooldown. So that's nice. But in an AoE, you can take Burning Alive, where every 2 seconds, Fiery Brand will spread to one nearby enemy. So this is going to help you in those like smaller AoE pulls, which are, again, I think a bit more likely now for sure with the target caps in Shadowlands. Like if you're going to pull like 3, 4, 5 mobs, you're going to get the Fiery Brand up on all of those. And of course, Immolation Aura with Charred Flesh is going to be increasing its duration on all of those. So you should get very, very good uptime on Fiery Brand, even in AoE. So this is, to me, very exciting. It's very, very exciting. Like I said, I mean, this legendary is very powerful. Spamming Soul Cleave with Fracture. I did take Fracture for this. You get half cooldown reduction on Fiery Brand. So it's a 30-second cooldown. It gives you the 10-second buff. And again, when you combo that with the increased Immolation Aura duration and the cooldown reduction, or sorry, the increase on duration from Fiery Brand from Immolation Aura, Fiery Brand, basically, it lasts for 15 seconds. It has a 30-second cooldown. It's pretty damn good. So an interesting new build here for the Vengeance Demon Hunter, which got that little bit of a buff and is looking, I think, pretty good actually. We've obviously just been releasing Warlock videos on the channel, so we're going to have a few Warlock changes here as well, so do bear these in mind if you've been just come from watching the Warlock videos. There's some nice stuff here. The biggest one for sure, Legendaries. There are some nice buffs to the Legendaries. Destruction first. This is a nice small buff, but a cool one, where your Chaos Bolt, this is, I forget the name of it, but it's the one where it's the Madness of Aj-Akir. That's what it's called, the Madness of Aj-Akir. Chaos Bolt increases the damage of Chaos Bolt by 10% and reduces the cast time of Chaos Bolt by 20% for 3 seconds. So they actually buffed the cast time reduction by an extra 10%. So that's definitely going to feel a lot better. Going to really help you dump out those Chaos Bolts, do a lot of damage, and help you maybe squeeze in like an extra one or something into a Havoc window. So that's going to feel really good. So that's a nice little buff. The bigger buff to a Legendary, though, is for the Affliction Warlock. Sacrilash's Dark Strike. This has been raised up to the power of its Legion form. Well, it was this strong, but the tooltip was different. So it increases corruption damage by 15%. So that's some nice overall damage. But more importantly, any target affected by a corruption has their movement speed slowed by 60%. So this was a legendary that was extremely powerful back in Legion for Affliction. And this was how it was working on the Shadowlands beta. But the tooltip up until now said it was supposed to only slow movement speed by 15%. Turns out that it was actually intended that, yes, this does slow by 60%. So this is another thing that could make the Affliction Warlock extremely potent in Mythic Plus. That's a massive slow, so huge utility from that. Huge for PvP if it's fully effective there. So one to keep an eye on for sure. This is apparently intended to be extremely strong. One slight nerf, or at least slight gameplay tweak, which I actually think makes sense, is for one of the talents, essentially the fire build talent that I was talking about before with the Destruction Warlock. A thing that fuels that is Roaring Blaze. So Roaring Blaze affects your Channel Demon Fire, your Immolate, Incinerate, and Conflict Rate damage to the target by 30% for 8 seconds. So this no longer affects your Rain of Fire, okay? It doesn't affect your Rain of Fire. In my opinion, this is actually fine. I think this is actually still a good change. I think it still works. It does make the Inferno talent maybe a little less appealing, and Fire and Brimstone starts to look a little bit better. But I think this is fair. You know, it was reaching the weird point where, with the right build, the right setup, that it was potential that Rain of Fire would be just ever so slightly better than Chaos Bolt was in single target. And while I think that's kind of fun, and it's a bit of a laugh, you know, it's kind of a laugh. I think it's actually, it's okay if with this fire build you're going, okay, 2 targets, I'm starting to blast it Rain of Fire, that feels really good. If there's just 1 target though, okay, Chaos Bolt should probably be the way to go. So it's going to be, you know, with the fire build, Chaos Bolt is your single target spender now. Once you get to 2 or more targets, that is where Rain of Fire starts to take over. So Rain of Fire takes over earlier than the other builds. But yeah, I think this change makes sense. I think it's fair. Then we have another couple of tweaks. One good tweak is that Curse of Recklessness is gone. So you only have Curse of Weakness, Curse of Tongues, and Curse of Exhaustion now. Curse of Recklessness was the one that made target do 10% more physical damage, but take 5% more physical damage. It was just a mandatory debuff to put on stuff in raids. It was a mandatory debuff to just spread around in Mythic Plus. It was just kind of a hassle if you had physical damage dealers in your party. So honestly, it's a welcome change that is gone. It's like, is the Warlock lacking in rage utility? No, not at all. They're an amazing damage dealing class. They have the Gateway, they have Health Stones, they have the Ritual Summoning. They have a load of fantastic utility that no other spec or class can provide. So I think that the Warlock is just fine without that extra bit of utility. That's good. It just removes the hassle. Unfortunately, I think this is terrible. is we have a new thing come back, which is lots and lots of flavor, but it's going to be a balanced nightmare. Ritual of Doom. Ritual of Doom is back. So this costs 1 soul shard. This has a 1 hour cooldown, right? You channel for a Ritual of Doom. You have to have 4 additional party members help you. So you need a full party of 5 people. They help you finish the channel. When they do, 1 random party member dies and it summons a Doom Guard. Now, the Doom Guard will attack you, but will, after a little bit of time, it will automatically become enslaved. In fact, Enslaved Demon is now called Subjugate Demon, so it will get automatically subjugated. This exists as an additional pet on top of your already existing pet, and he'll fight for you for 15 minutes. He will sometimes break free, and you have to re-enslave him. But yeah, so there's obviously, this is a classic Warlock ability, you know, it was always there. You can see kind of nice if I cancel it early. It actually lets you move while you're channeling. And also, if you cancel it early, it doesn't actually put it on cooldown. So that's positive. I mean, could you imagine how bad it would be if you started channeling this and accidentally, I accidentally pressed strafe. I accidentally walked forward a step and it's on a 1 hour cooldown. So obviously, there's loads of flavor and it's a classic Warlock ability. They've asked for feedback on this, and I'm going to give my feedback, which is extremely negative, which is, for me, what do I like doing? I like Mythic raiding. I obviously like making videos now, but probably in order then a preference in-game. Probably like Mythic raiding, Mythic Plus. I kind of like raided battlegrounds a bit. I think kind of like some casual battlegrounds and some mount collecting, and then maybe like some arena kind of at the bottom. But obviously this doesn't work in arena. You don't have enough party members. This is just terrible for raiding and for Mythic Plus though. Like I'm just sitting here and I'm sitting here imagining, you know, progressing on Sire Denathrius Mythic and going, okay team. All right, we're on the hour. All right, 6 Warlocks, summon up your Doom Guards. All right, guys, this is where we're pushing for cutting edge. Whatever, Bob fucks up a mechanic, wipes the raid. Okay, guys, well, I guess we're back to 50 minutes, I guess, of just practicing Sire Denathrius. I'll let you know in the next hour when we've got our Doom Guards and this is the actual kill pool. Like, that seems so bad. Again, for Mythic Plus, a Mythic Plus is typically about 30 minutes long. So with this is an hour long cooldown. It's kind of going, okay, yo, Nubkeks, you have Ritual of Doom for this Mythic Plus run? Okay, cool, this is our push run. I guess the run after that then, no Doom Guard, I guess no push run, like we'll just, whatever, we'll do a low key, or you know what, maybe we'll just kick you from the group and bring in a different Warlock who does have Ritual of Doom. You know, like, this is too many problems. Like, probably just disable it in raids, disable it in Mythic Plus, should be disabled in raided battlegrounds, should be basically disabled nearly everywhere. So then the question remains, where are you actually going to use it? Like for world questing? For world PvP? With like a party? I don't know. Like, I just don't see where this is supposed to fit in and not be obnoxiously annoying and obnoxiously unbalanced. So, yeah, I hate this. I hate this. I hate it. Get rid of it. I hate it. Put it in as some fun little perk out in, like, a zone somewhere. Like, whatever. Patch 9.1, have, like, fun little bonuses that classes can trigger out in the world, and have Ritual of Doom be that. So it's a little bonus while you're questing. But not like this. Not like. And then the final class I want to look at in this video is the Mage. And there's quite a few nice little tweaks for the Mage, and one rather controversial one. So, first up, the controversial one. Rune of Power, the talent, is now back as a casted ability. However, okay, so it's not how it was before. It's kind of a combo between the two. So, it has a 45-second cooldown on the 1.5-second cast time. The rune, though, does last for 15 seconds, still gives you the 40% spell power, and you still get an automatic one when you do Arcane Power or Icy Veins or Combustion. Now, the thing that makes this a bit weird, for sure, with the Arcane Mage, for example, one definitely clunky interaction is I suspect there is a conduit for Arcane Mage, which makes Arcane Missiles reduce the cooldown of Arcane Power, okay? And I suspect you're going to be wanting to run that because you're going to want the 1.5 minute Arcane Power, because you have Touch of the Magi, which again you can conduit up to do basically 40% increased damage, and that has a 45-second cooldown. So the idea here would be, if you can get the conduit that reduces Arcane Power to 1.5 minute, on pull I Arcane Power into Touch of the Magi, I have 60% increased damage from Arcane Power, stacked with the automatic Rune of Power doing 40% increased damage, stacked with the conduited Touch of the Magi doing 40% increased damage. That's a ton of single target burst, so I don't see how that is not the way to play it. Like, that just seems like necessary now, and you're going to do that. But then after that Arcane Power runs out, Touch of the Magi is on a 30-second cooldown, and you haven't used Rune of Power because you have that free one down for all of Arcane Power. And this is where it gets weird, because Rune of Power, you're just going to leave it there, not pressed, unpressed. And you're going to wait, and then when Touch of the Magi comes back up, you're going to Rune of Power into Touch of the Magi, you're going to blast. And then what happens the next time Touch of the Magi comes back up? Well, you should have reduced Arcane Power down. So the next time, again, Rune of Power, Arcane Power, and Touch of the Magi all come off cooldown together. But you're not going to press Rune of Power. Instead, you're going to Arcane Power into Touch of the Magi and get the automatic Rune of Power. So once again, Rune of Power is going to sat there, available to press, but a trap to press it. You don't obviously want to press it while Arcane Power is up and you got the free one. That's a waste of time. It's a waste of a cooldown. It's a waste of a global cooldown. And you don't want to press it then after it expires because it's much more valuable to save it for the Touch of the Magi. So this is a weird one. I mean, maybe it will see some sort of use in AoE, but it's a bit strange. Also worth noting, a lot of you guys pointed out in the last video, Blizzard removed this, kind of unfortunately, I'd say. But you guys noticed, very smart, that whenever Time Anomaly, which procs random buffs, Arcane Power, Evocation, or Time Warp for small durations, when it was proccing Arcane Power, it was automatically dropping a Rune of Power. That no longer happens. Hopefully we can get it to just randomly happen here. But, well, there's Time Warp, okay. But, yeah, the Arcane Power you get from this no longer triggers Rune of Power. So I think it does open up the, I guess, the two different playstyles of the Rune of Power plus Overpowered. Although it is kind of clunky with leaving Rune of Power on cooldown, and it opens up then the Incanter's Flow with the Time Anomaly for a more consistent and slightly random burst, but kind of like consistent AoE damage, like going through Mythic Plus or something like that. Could be okay. I suspect that you're probably just going to go Rune of Power Overpowered most of the time now, with the reduced cooldown on Arcane Power and all the rest. So yeah, that is something to... definitely something to bear in mind. And again, this is the same for all the different specs. This will probably work a bit better, a bit smoother for like Fire or Frost, where you can drop the second Rune of Power and it's fine. Like certainly for Frost, you could use the second Rune of Power and it's totally fine. Like this on cooldown one, just use it on cooldown with a Glacial Spike and it's gonna work. It's gonna be good. Get a few Glacial Spikes in there, you'll be good. But certainly with Arcane, because you're really building around the Touch of the Magi. Again, here you go. Okay, we got Arcane Power. No Rune of Power, right? No Rune of Power. It's a little bit of a concern to me in terms of it's slightly clunky. Now, a couple of good pieces of news there. Sorry, my nose is itchy. The leveling perks have come in for the Mage specs. Arcane basically had its leveling perks already. But for Fire, there is Fireball rank 3, which just gives you 15% increased damage from Fireball. So that's kind of nice. And there is a Flame Strike, right? Flame Strike now has rank 2 and rank 3. So rank 2, it's a little bit weird. This is a new one as far as I'm aware. Reduces the cast time of Flame Strike by half a second. Now, Flame Strike's a very long cast time. Essentially, this is for like sort of Mythic Plus, where you can hard cast Flame Strike if there's enough mobs. So it's just going to help you with your hard cast Flame Strike. So that's kind of cool. For the Frost Mage, again, I'm not 100% sure if some of these did not exist before and have just been separated out into leveling perks. It's possible that some of these have been. You guys have main Mage in the past, can let me know if that's the case. But there's a Cone of Cold rank 2, which ups the slow from 50% to 70%. So that's nice. There is a Frostbolt rank 2. There it is, which increases Frostbolt's damage by 15%. So it could have some interesting interactions with like the Frostbolt speeding up Legendary or with the Necrolord Covenant ability. Could be okay there. And there is also an Ice Lance rank 2, which increases Ice Lance's damage by 10%. So maybe sort of helping to crush in advance a bit the no Ice Lance builds, which could potentially raise their rear their heads again later on in the expansion. But they are the changes for the Mage. So yeah, leveling perks for Fire and for Frost, and another rework to Rune of Power, which is still not quite right, not quite perfect. I kind of like the Rune of Power being a casted thing. You go like, you know, it's kind of fun to go, you know, Rune of Power into Touch of the Magi. That to me is a satisfying and fun little gameplay interaction. I can like Presence of Mind and spam some instant things here, fire off some missiles. I think it's pretty cool, right? I think it's quite fun, and then this sort of persists for a while afterwards and you can play around with it. I like it. I think it's cool. But yeah, just a little bit some weird overlaps leaving Rune of Power on cooldown. But there you go, guys. They are all of the class changes I'm covering in this video. I hope that you enjoyed. Hope you saw stuff interesting. There are I'm going to do the priests in a separate video because this would be too long. So we're going to look at priests tomorrow. Yeah, we will I'll come back for more then as well at another point. There were changes to like rogues and death knights and stuff, but we're going to be looking at those classes again. I just wanted to cover the classes that I've already done videos on and give you just sort of an update on how they're being improved. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.